Saw black sand, we saw green sand, we saw a lot of sea turtles, a lot of ocean life and stuff. Florida is so clean water. Once you get out of Norfolk, I took the bank and into like a coral country tour, and that was there. And so that was kind of thought that was realize sometimes with salmon, I did. They'll come up and show you the fish are.
All right. Oh, I'm live. Look at that. All right. I will call this town council work session to order on this October 2nd, 2024. Notice that there is a quorum present. Welcome everyone to the chambers and those who are tuned in online. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos, Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott, Mr.
Here.
Nolan,
Here.
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Here. All right. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Let's have it. Next up, I have an opportunity for anybody to make a declaration of personal interest concerning anything on the agenda at this time. Not hearing any. We'll move right into the finance report. Ms. Julie Moore.
Good evening. You have the August reports in front of you. This is our second month of the new budget year. When you look at the revenue to budget, we're not quite at the 17% that we should be, but that's because the budget assumes, as we've talked about in the past, that we're getting the budget amounts equally each month, and you know that there's some of our big revenues we don't get to certain times of the years, like the real estate tax and the business license. So until we get further in the year, we're going to always be lagging when we look at the budget to revenue. When you look at the revenue compared to previous year, we're slightly below in two funds. The general fund, as we've talked about in the past, there's some taxes that we don't get till a month or two behind, whereas last year we know those amounts and they're booked in the right month. Therefore, that will always lag until closer to the end of the year. Expenses to budget were below the 2 months of budgeted amount, so that's positive. And then when you look at expenses to prior year, we're slightly above last year, but as I've mentioned last month, that was because we had some purchases, like in the sewer fund, they purchased a service truck with a crane, and then we've also gotten 2 buses in the transportation fund. Any questions?
Any questions for Finance Director at this time? Not hearing any. Thank you. Next on the agenda is old business, discussion of proposed ordinance number 234. And this is regarding fences. This discussion came up before this body before, and then there was a motion to send it back to the Planning Commission. But it is before us first with a few examples that were requested before that happened. So we have some examples of some other fence ordinances. Miss Austin is here. If we have any questions. And Mr. Davis, do you have a walk into this discussion?
Mayor, I can. We provided you with a copy of the ordinance that you have previously seen. You have the copies, as the mayor just said, about other localities that we pulled. I mean, obviously, we didn't go through every single one, but we pulled towns, we pulled cities, we pulled ones that are college communities that are either or of those types of things. I think what you'll notice is that our ordinance that we drafted is pretty much in line with all the other places that have a fence ordinance for the most part. except our rear fence is actually taller than most of those that are around. One of the things Ashley and I did talk about is we had talked, I think there was some discussion at the last meeting about the composition of what fences would be. And so I'm not sure if we actually stated this or not, but there's actually in our existing ordinance a definition for what a fence is. So I'll just read it. It's a freestanding structure of metal, masonry, composition, which is composite, vinyl or wood or any combination, resting on or partially buried in the ground and rising above ground level, with posts at regular intervals, and used for confinement, screening, or petitioning purposes. So those areas that, of what it's made out of, that's actually already in the definition. Wouldn't need to go into the actual ordinance. Well, it already is an ordinance. It's in the definition section. So I would just say that other than, a discussion maybe about height, it really, I think, kind of boils down to whether council wants a fence ordinance or not at this point. But we're here for any questions.
Thank you. And floor is open for any discussion about said ordinance. If anyone has anything that they would like to speak on.
Yeah, thank you very much for pulling all those ordinances. There was some pretty neat stuff in there that you're like, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that. And where Mr. Dwyer had sent us a picture of somebody had used some plastic housing wrap as a fence, and I guess our other thing kind of handles that. And but I mean, like you said, it may need to be defined in the ordinance. I really liked Lexington's with some tweaks to it. I am dead set against the height and dead set against the see-through. I'm sorry, I will not infringe upon anyone's Fourth Amendment rights to privacy. So therefore, that's my feeling on it. But a lot of the stuff in Lexington, I kind of tweaked it myself and just playing with it. And I really like the thoughts that it was, you don't want to have it, you want to have it say something where it's not in the public right of way and things like that. And the definitely don't want to block anybody's view at intersections. But as far as the height and the see-through piece of it, I will say I am pretty hardcore against that for people's right to privacy. That's all I got on that.
Are you specifically talking about the front, or are you talking about the back and the sides as well, Mr. Hardy?
Any height on any of them.
Fair enough.
Ours doesn't have anything about see-through or anything like that. You're talking about Lexington?
That was, no, that was what we discussed last time when we discussed the ideas of making them see-through in the front and stuff like that. It just kind of, that one I just had an issue with that one as well. And it's not just me, it's people that have come to me and folks that I've spoken with. This is not my thoughts. This is my constituents that have come to me and spoken about these things. So that's where I stand.
Well, I'll stick my neck out and say that I still believe we need a fence ordinance. And I disagree respectfully with Mr. Hardy. I think that we do need to have some specifications on the height. And for the same reasons discussed before, really, it could be safety, it could be appearance, or somebody putting up something that is absurd in height that could be really detrimental to the neighbors' property values. If anything, I would go down to 6. I would entertain 6-foot height in the sides and the back instead of 8. I can live with 8, but I think 4 in the front is a very good idea.
Okay, I'm going to enter into it too. And I'm just talking out loud on this, and I just kind of really want to see how you guys feel about this as well. I came up with the thought process of the safety aspect of it and the visibility as far as blocking someone's view or pedestrian safety, I think is paramount. I mean, that's just a given as far as I'm concerned. But why not adopt that part of it, the fence ordinance, but let the other part of it be a conditional use to where it has to come before us each and every time somebody wants to put a fence up, and we review it at that time and decide, make a decision. Now, whether or not we want to be doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which I don't think we're going to, because there's, to my knowledge, there's only one instance of where this violation has created us even having this conversation. And it was from a safety aspect as far as blocking view. But I'm not so sure that we need to define what somebody wants to do except for on a case-by-case basis. I don't think you're going to see that many cases of fences. And I'm just talking in generalities here, and you may differ with me, which is perfectly fine too. But that's my 2 cents worth.
Just so you know, every time you would have to put in the ordinance that you'd have to get a permit and file for a conditional use. A conditional use is $250.
It's 500.
500 to come
And-
before council to get a conditional use permit.
I would say between July and August, I approved 4 zoning permits for fences.
And each one of those would have had to pay $500 to come before you to get a conditional use permit for a fence.
But have you had any others other than those 4?
Yes. That was just 2 months.
On average, how many applications for a fence do you have?
1 a month.
I still stand on what I say.
It seems to me the,
I just wanted to give you that it's gonna cost the citizen $500 to come before you to put a
I feel
fence
like
on
if they're after it that bad, they won't mind paying the $500.
I can get behind Tommy on that as well.
I think the problem with that would be if you were to, if one person comes and says, hey, I want to put up a 8-foot fence, and you, or whatever height, but once you set a precedent, then you've almost got to stick to it. Otherwise, it becomes somehow discriminatory, I think. Well, I'll stick to my original thing. I think we should have a height restriction.
Okay, I'm going to chime in. Where I stand on this is that I do think we need a fencing ordinance. I would like to go subsection by subsection and vote for each individual one, see where people land on that. I think the main holdup I have is D, which is the height limitation on the fence at the front of the house, which I don't believe is a problem or has ever been a problem in Farmville. And I think that we're reacting to a situation we found on Longwood Avenue that needs to be rectified, but maybe overreaching if we're going to try and standardize everything in the front of people's houses. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I can understand what everybody has said so far in reference to each side of it. My main concern is the safety. I'm not too keen on the height. I know some people were talking about the animals in the yard and jumping fences. But if they have the fence in the yard, why do they have to tie a dog up? They want the dog to be able to run in the yard. So we have to make sure that we're not doing double jeopardy when it comes to that, when they have animals they like to take care of, like to run freely. So I can see all 3 ways, really. But I guess I look at it from the standpoint, again, of the safety. I'm not too keen, I'm not too hard on the height. If we can come to some kind of agreement. As for doing it each time, no, that's a whole lot of money for people. But I can see the sections being different, the height where some people live in town. You can put up an 8-foot fence, but in other areas, we probably wouldn't want to put up an 8-foot fence because of the line of sight. So I'm talking about on the.
In general.
In general, around the backside. I'm not, 8 foot is not gonna be in the front anyway.
Well, no, I mean, that's part of the whole discussion is, it could be.
Oh, no, yeah, see, that's an issue all in itself, though.
Yeah,
So-
the 8 foot, what we're talking about right now is only the side and the rear, and there wouldn't be any site issue typically.
Exactly.
The front is where you would want to be out of line of sight of traffic and those types of things. But, no, I just wanted to point, just for clarification, I mean, if you, multiple ways. Mr. Yolen's comment is, it could be any height in the front, if we take out D.
It could be any height in the front, absolutely. It never has been any height in the front. We're reacting to something that hasn't happened yet.
And then, to Mr. Parrott's, you would decide on a case-by-case basis of whether it's what it is in the front, the side, the front, back, all that.
I guess I'm more in line with Mr. Parrott in reference to, I'd rather deal with it each time than to just set a standard and then we have to come back and try to change that.
Can I ask a quick question, and you may be able to answer both? What's the, and this is just me, not asking, I need to know the knowledge. Conditional use, what's the difference? Could they do a variance? Is that, I mean, I don't know what the difference exactly is.
A variance is once you already have it, they're seeking a variance on the code section that you already have drafted.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, like I said, the definition though is already set as far as the type of material. It's the height of the fence and where it's located. It is key to the ordinance that we're looking at, and making sure that it's not in the front, blocking the view of sight.
And I have to agree with Mr. Parrott and Mr. Hunter. My major concern is the safety of that.
That is my major concern, is the safety as well. I just don't want to infringe. And we do need a fence ordinance, and it needs to have, like you said, the definition would actually go in the ordinance, and we do need to have the permit piece of it and the other part that talks about the safety and view and vision and stuff like that.
I go back to.
I'm sorry, we wouldn't have anything in an ordinance except that it's conditional use, other than the current definition that's already in the zoning ordinance that's adopted. Because line of sight and all that, you would have to determine, they're gonna have to give us a plot plan of showing a design of their fence, where it's gonna be located, all that. So there wouldn't be any ordinance for a fence if you're gonna do a conditional use permit. You're gonna set the regulation based on what they're drawing.
Don't you guys have to have some sort of guideline for the conditional use to know what council's wishes are in that situation?
Well,
I mean, it's gonna come to us, I know that.
That's what we're trying to do now. I mean,
I know, but I'm just talking about, I'm talking about the shall not impair vehicular or pedestrian travel visibility. I mean.
That's gonna be
and then you just have the fences have to be done on a conditional use permit to determine height and whatnot and whatever. Leave A and B and
then write a C that says
conditional or something like that.
all fences has to apply for a conditional use permit. We'll have to we'll have to work with the attorney to see.
I'd like to make one last comment, and I'll leave it alone. If you're going to go to the expense of spending the kind of money that I think would be involved in your average fence, I think you will find that a conditional use permit of $500 would be a minute amount of money compared to what you're getting ready to spend for a fence. That's my only take on it as far as if we use the conditional use side of it.
Just, I think the reason it's taken me back, just to give you some point of view, is the reason it's taken me back a little bit about that suggestion is when Lee was here as the planning director, we came to council, some were not one at that time, about increasing and looking at fees. And I took a hit for that, about people having permit fees and raising the cost of those conditional use permit, rezoning. But I can tell you, $500 does not even cover, in today's world. The whole point is somebody's asking for something special in addition to what is allowed, right? And so they're asking to come and get approval for that, which has to be advertised. $500 doesn't even cover
Doesn't even cover one advertisement.
one advertisement. We've got to advertise twice, most cases. So we're already losing money by not raising those fees. But what I'm saying is that's why it took me back by the suggestion was that we're gonna make someone, when I was trying to only raise like permit fees a little bit and things like that, and I caught some heat from that from some council member at that time. So just trying to explain where I'm just making sure everybody's on the same page on it.
Yeah, and that's why, in my mind, it makes sense, like when the suggestion is the conditional use permit, in my mind, logically, it makes sense to set parameters that then the conditional use permit operates off of, right? Like if you had height restrictions, but then is there an option for a conditional use if you wanted to build something bigger?
Not typically,
Yeah.
because you've set the standard.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor. Pardon
Yeah,
me.
no,
A quick question, because I know don't fences on residential properties, they can't run exactly on the property line? Isn't there a setback, right? There's no setback.
They can actually, not in the front, because we have easements in the front, but technically the property line on the sides are owned by each party. Like you can put a fence straight on the property line and the rear.
Question. I read in one of those ordinances where it was mandatory that if you did decide to put up a fence, and say we did adopt a fence ordinance, that the finished side, quote.
That was ours.
Okay.
Ours has
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
it's in a couple
Yeah,
others
that
as well.
That should be facing, yeah.
And the reason for that is being a good neighbor. Some people.
Oh, absolutely.
Some people want the good-looking side to them and say, who cares about my neighbor? They can get the slats that are the reinforcement. I mean, that's just making sure not everybody is a good
Yeah,
neighbor.
if you want it to be pretty on your side, you can put another row of slats on.
Well, I'll go one step further, and I know I'm going to get a lot of laughs at this, but say, for instance, I have a pool in my backyard, and I have two-story houses on each side of me. Well, the first floor, nobody could see my pool area, but the second floor could. So I want to put up a 12-foot fence so that my neighbor can't watch me swim in the buff. So you've got to take a little bit of consideration about privacy as far as the height restrictions and that type of thing.
They still gonna see you from the second floor.
Well, I'm just using it as an example. Trust me. But I'm just saying, there's always that case of something being different. Whereas if we set a standard and it's cut and dry, then we have no wiggle room whatsoever.
But that's what you do most of the time. You create a standard for people to follow.
Right, and as Adam said, and we kind of don't want to overreach, just kind of want to get it where it's the best for everybody. And another thought, and I know you and I discussed it one day, about gardens. If somebody puts in a garden on their side lot, are they gonna have to come get a permit to put a fence around their garden? I mean, there's a garden on Virginia Street that's a community garden. Do they need to go get a permit for that fence?
If it is a corner lot, they do have to adhere to that code section about corner lots and nothing in between 2.5 and 10.5 feet. That's already in our code.
I got you.
I would think,
Which wouldn't stop a deer, sorry, Mr. Dwyer.
I think that what concerns me is we're not protecting against extreme behavior. The town of Crew, next to one of the houses the Habitat built, somebody built a plastic fence. Now, because that's prohibited. It's an example of somebody doing something extreme because they can, and they're not restricted. A 12-foot fence, to me, I get it. On the other hand, what's that going to do to your neighbor's property value if there's a 12-foot fence? They're going to sell their real estate. I guarantee the realtor's going to say, uh-oh, this is going to be a problem. That's what I'm hearing from the realtors I've talked to. Also, I'm not just here expressing my opinion. I've also asked people, I said, let's go to an extreme case. What if somebody built an 8-foot tall fence in their front yard? What would you feel about that as your neighbor? I didn't find anybody thought that was reasonable. Now, you can say, well, that's not likely to happen, but it wasn't also likely somebody's going to put in a plastic fence in Crews. So what we're protecting against is extreme behavior that would not be acceptable to probably most people. So, anyway.
There's a couple options.
There are a lot of options.
This can, as was motioned and carried in the previous meeting, can go back to Planning Commission with some sort of framework of recommendation for them to work from. Or it can come back up for a vote next week. So, only if it's as is, correct. If it has any changes, we'd have to do a public hearing again. So the question being, if the choice is to send it back to Planning Commission, we have to come to at least some general consensus about what the standards are that we're asking them to debate. Or you can bite the bullet and vote on this next week and let it go where it goes. Mr. Dwyer?
I don't think that the Planning Commission can really offer much personally on this. We have other municipalities, what they are doing. I think that's all they could really do, I would think, is just kind of go over what others are doing, which that's what we're doing. I'm not so sure that I can really see what that's going to add to it personally.
Well, if you don't mind, Mr. Dwyer, they actually have, anytime there's a zoning change, they have to at least have an opportunity to have a public hearing and recommend something to the council. So if, I'll use Mr. Parrott's example, that you want to, if we can, I gotta ask, if we can do it, I'll merge a few with Mr. Parrott. If we kept A and B and the part of, did the conditional uses, the rest of it, if that's possible legally. The Planning Commission would have to then determine if they agree or not, have a public hearing and vote it up or down and send it back to you that they recommend it or don't recommend it. And then council has to have a public hearing to take action.
Well, that sounds like the pathway. If everybody's in agreement, find that piece of information out, and then it comes back to us in a work session to determine if there's any reason to move forward on that cup portion. And we can go from there, right?
I mean, I get, so, Mayor, what you're saying is, I need to know, well, I guess, I need a majority to say how we're going to, I mean, specifically, I need specifics of what you want so that we can get with Mr. Elder and then
Well, didn't the planning commission make a recommendation? That's what's before us right now.
yes,
Okay, so they've already seen it.
yes.
Okay.
But if it
and-
changes, it's got to go back.
Right.
Right, the current ordinance as it stands went before the planning commission. They pushed it through, I think, was it unanimous or is it one against? I don't recall.
I don't
I
recall.
think it was overwhelming majority though, but yeah, so that leaves us at this place. Mr. Yolen, I believe you had something to say.
Okay, throwing something at the wall, see if it sticks. A, B, C, and E. Put the conditional use permit attached to fences on the front of the house. If somebody wants to come in here and do something that's like 8 feet tall in front of their house, they have to pay the $500 for the conditional use permit. They have to advertise. People get to come in and say their piece. But what they're doing in the backyard and the side of their house, you know, to me, I understand I'm stepping away from you, Mr. Hardy, but to me, these all seem reasonable. A, B, C, and E are great. D is the only problem that's holding me up individually.
That's just the height of the front yard.
Yes, sir.
And so if something, and I'm going to ask a simple variance question. So if this was put into place like this, and Mr. Parrott had his pool in the backyard with the two-story houses, and he wanted a 14-foot fence in his backyard, he could request a variance? Is that what you're saying?
He could request it. It's very unlikely that the Board of Zoning Appeals is gonna, you have to meet certain criteria to get a variance. And it can't be self-inflicted. In other words, you can't say, but I want a 12-foot fence. That doesn't say you can override, that the state code for a variance is specific on, it probably would not have passed.
And then that's where I have issue. Yeah,
Conditional use permit is the way to go versus that.
Not if you do what Mr. Yolen said,
Oh,
and you
yes,
said
no.
it in the thing
Yeah.
that he said A, B, C, and E. C says a maximum height of 8 feet. You can, a conditional use permit would not change that. The conditional use permit would only be for the front, in essence.
Yeah,
So they're paying $500 for the front.
So A, B, I'm for A, B, and E, and conditional use. That's my thoughts.
A, B, and E.
That basically takes the height out of, and where the conditional for the height would be cover C and D for the most part. A and B,
I mean, you don't even need E, because you can set that in a conditional use permit.
okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I
Cool.
mean, the only thing you would really need is A and B. And we've got to make sure that, I want to make sure legally we can put fences A and B and requires a conditional use permit for height and front, side, and rear yards and finish.
Can we not ask Mr. Elder right now, or is that improper?
I mean, you could. I don't know that you want to put him on the spot of answering that question.
He will not know the answer right now. That's correct.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
How much did that cost us, Mr. Elder?
He's already here.
He's already here.
It will cost us later when he's looking it up.
I would like to see you explore that possibility, personally, A and B with conditional use permit.
Let's get a consensus. Is there a consensus?
I'm there.
That,
I guess my question is,
that's two.
how high would somebody want their fence to be on the side that we're gonna approve anyway?
That's the reason for the conditional use permit. We'll get to say that.
you can play
No,
favorites with your
no.
neighbors.
And
the danger.
Look, if that's what y'all want to do, that's fine. Just so you know, it's not a quick turnaround because when somebody wants a fence, they're gonna have to go, a conditional use permit goes to the planning commission. They have a public hearing. They're gonna make a recommendation to you all, again, each time. Then you're gonna have a public hearing the following month. So these people could wait 2 to 3 months to get a fence approved.
That's not what I'm saying. I understand that folks are involved in the conditional use. I want to apply the conditional use only to the front fence. I'd like the standards as you've set them forth, as you've researched and found out. I feel like 8 foot is sufficient, honestly. And I'm fine the way I said I was, but I would support what you all were supporting as far as going back and trying to finagle something. I just don't think you need to throw $500 towards the cost of a fence unless you're going to do something extraordinary, and then it really only applies to the front. Again, to Mr. Dwyer's point, because of the way it looks and the way it affects other people's land values. But A, B, C, and E, I'm fine with. Thank you.
Okay, so currently, we have 2 in favor. You have 3 in favor of send it back, but with what consideration? With the consideration of the CUP on C and D, or just on D?
To me, just C and D.
Can I actually chime in? It's the same thing from a legal standpoint. Whether you tie in the front and the back, or just the front or just the back, it's the same. If Scott wants me to look into this from a legal standpoint, it's not going to make any difference where the fence is. The question is going to be, can you pass A and B and then have a conditional use permit for some other section? Doesn't make any difference to me where the fence is. The conclusion I'm going to give you is going to be the same regardless.
I guess my point for a legal opinion is, can we have A and B and then
Tied
say
into a conditional use permit.
tied to a conditional use permit?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't make any difference whether you say A, B, and, well, I guess if you're just using A and B. I think what council is debating, the way I'm hearing it, is, okay, do we tie this in to where it's a conditional use permit just for the front or for the front and the back?
Correct.
Legally,
Right.
it
Legally,
doesn't matter.
No, legally it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but it would matter in that you would see less traffic through here because it would only be, as Mr. Yolen was stating, in extreme front yard cases, which is where we have concerns
Yeah.
for property values. and that
I
sort
just
of
want to
thing.
make clear, if you guys are debating on how to basically phrase the question to me for legal research, what I'll tell you is it doesn't make any difference.
And for me, it's a little bit different. And mine is, can we have certain specifics and then also require a conditional use permit for
Yeah.
other things?
Yeah.
Well, it seems like either or, we still have that question.
Correct.
Correct.
And the other thing is if each request for a conditional use permit has to go before the planning commission has already kind of established that they want a height restriction. So, I mean, if somebody says, I want a 12-foot fence, are they going to change from that? Well, they may, or they may not. But I'm just saying, they've already expressed, they're part of the process, but they've expressed their opinion on it already. So I don't know maybe something could be gained out of maybe they would approve it, but maybe they wouldn't either. But you have to pay the $500 even if it's not approved. Is that correct? Well, something to think about.
It is something to think about because you're debating whether or not you're gonna prolong a process and include a permit fee. So far, we have 3 now in favor of the CUP on the height restrictions.
Would you repeat what it is they're in favor of?
So there's 3 in favor of sending it back to the planning commission with the stipulation of looking at whether, well, first we gotta find out legally if it can happen, if you can have a CUP, conditional use permit on height restrictions on the fence attached to what we already have.
And I think based on what Mr. Elder said, it doesn't matter whether it's the three of us and Adam, it doesn't matter, so that would technically,
No, that part doesn't matter, just a matter of whether or not it's
So that-
legally something that can happen.
And you would want a CUP if anybody were to build in front of their building line. So if they were to build a fence directly into the side of the house from the side yard, they would not need to come before and get a conditional use permit, only if they were to build.
That's only under Mr. Yolen's suggestion. The other three, what I've heard is
For any height?
any height.
Any location?
Any location.
So can we go back to at least moving out from tonight? Can we move out? Is there a consensus at least to see legally if either of this four's possibility is a possibility?
Majority rules, I don't think I would disagree with it, but that's only one person, so.
Mr. Reed? Well, it seems like there's at least 4 council members in agreement on finding out if you can attach a CUP to the public safety aspect of the ordinance. So now it's in Mr. Elder's court. All right. Fence ordinances. We're going to move from fence ordinances to new business. New business. Item A, ordinance number 237, repealing current language of Chapter 10, erosion and sediment control, new language to update regulations. Mr. Davis.
This one's pretty simple. There were some changes in regulations from the state as far as from stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. Long story short, it used to be 2 manuals, it's now 1 manual combined, and they supplied local governments with ordinances that they could use. So you just change the name and the people and some of those things. As you know, we do our own erosion and sediment control. The county does our stormwater management. So that's not changing. So we don't have to adopt both. We just need to address the erosion and sediment control. And so we've done that, and we work on it with staff. Then we send it to Mr. Elder's office. So what you have has been vetted all the way through. And like I said, it's the example from the Commonwealth of what they would support as far as the changes that were made. It covers all those areas.
Have any questions at this time concerning ordinance number 237? Not hearing any. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next up is the Zion subdivision preliminary plat site plan review. Ms. Austin?
And just so you know, the reason you get this is because council approves site plans. So this is a overview of what has been submitted before it'll actually be brought to you for approval, just so that you can vet it before and not see it the same night you're voting on it.
So the Zion subdivision is a 37 lot subdivision in the R3 high density residential area. It has a 60-foot right-of-way with 5-foot sidewalks on one side of the street. I have spoken to the developer, and the bond will be issued prior to council meeting of next week. The subdivision has been reviewed by Planning, Public Works, Erosion and Sediment Control, and through Prince Edward County for the stormwater. We have received a letter recommending approval of the stormwater permit from Hurt and Profit on September 25th. We've also received a traffic impact study for this area and a sewer study from the developer.
Have any questions concerning Lane Street plat?
Oh, I forgot this one.
Oh.
So the developer has built some houses on Lane Street, and it's going to be kind of a continuation of those homes. So just kind of an example of what the homes will look like in the neighborhood.
Right.
Just so you know, the developer's been lap, as
Yes, it's been like-
as Ashley has said, that you see the pictures and you've seen the homes on actual Lane Street.
You mentioned the sidewalks. Can you describe where they were? On one side of the street, you said, please?
Yes, they're going to come in off of Lane Street. If you're looking down Zion Drive, it's going to be on the right. And then when it gets to the circular area, it's going to cross the street and run all the way around the circle.
In other words, he's got to build the street.
He'll build the
It's not
street
an
and the
existing
sidewalks.
street, and he's got to build the sidewalks because of the new ordinance that we have passed.
And the sidewalks will only be on the
On our right, they're on the outer edge too, correct?
Just leading into the subdivision, and then it'll cross the street to go around the island.
So there's no sidewalks on anything on the.
Correct. Yes.
Yes,
Lane Street,
it'll
yes.
be a street off of Lane Street. The street doesn't exist yet.
Why would there be sidewalks on the smallest part of the footprint instead of on both sides of the street going around there? Why? The sidewalk's purpose is to serve the pedestrians, the people living there. There's a lot more people living on the perimeter on the outside of the sidewalk, on the outside than the inside. Who's going to cross the street and use the sidewalk and then cross the street to not use a sidewalk?
We don't require where the sidewalk is located, just that the subdivision has a sidewalk.
Just that there's one in front of some of the houses in a development?
The sidewalk is provided.
Let's look at that and make sure it doesn't have to, the purpose of it not being that it has to go around the street.
We can look into it.
I personally think that's pretty interesting. I would like to know, I'm with Mr. Yoling over here, and the fact my common sense would tell me that it would be the perimeter, not so much the circle, but the perimeter, for sure.
Or both.
Oh, yeah, or both.
I'm in agreement. Considering we have to walk down Main Street, cross the street, walk down Main Street, cross the street, walk down Main Street, cross the street to get to Walmart from here. So if we can avoid, figure out what's the best way to do it. I know it's an expense and it's a huge
It's a big expense.
It's a big expense, but figure out the best way and the most reasonable for the contractor.
And I recognize that it is a huge expense, but the reason this came up is it seems like it's an investment in the community, not just in the developers' houses and, the people they're going to sell. These walkable neighborhoods are what people strive for, and walking scales, and there are websites that rate your town as far as walkability. And the whole point is to get more people out there and keep them safe.
Obviously, we kind of thought that's what we had voted to do previously, so this is kind of hitting a little bit of a reality check, maybe.
You gonna take a look at it? Yeah. Any other questions concerning the plat at this time? Not hearing any. We'll move to the updated Farmville area bus plan. Mr. Davis?
This is, every 3 years it has to be done and updated for federal and state compliance, and so you have to approve it. It's part of the mechanism for them in funding, so. It's being presented for you. If you have any questions, Ashley's here to answer. She's spoken with Ms. Adams and will attempt to answer any that you may have about it.
This is periodically comes before us. I know I've read it quite a few times. Do we have any questions concerning the FAB plan update? Not hearing any questions on that. We will move to a report from the Finance Director, Ms. Julie Moore, on a letter from Brown, Edwards and Company.
You received in your packet planning letter from the auditors. It's a standard requirement that they send you communication before the audit starts. So if you have any questions or concerns or areas that you want them to look into, you can reach out to them. Our auditor's contact information is in that letter. So if you have any concerns, please feel free. I encourage you to reach out to them. So.
Thank you. Do you have any questions concerning that? All right. Thank you, Ms. Moore. And then next up, we get Ms. Moore again on bathroom build at the splash pad discussion.
So originally, I think it came to you that we were going to try to get a prefab bathroom with changing rooms. And then we discovered that that is not a possibility. You cannot find a prefab bathroom with changing rooms. And trust me, Bill Caldwell looked everywhere for one and could not find one. So we decided that the best approach would be to go to an engineer and ask him to draw up plans for us for this bathroom. And so he did give us a preliminary like drawings and then told us the fee for the engineer along with the potential cost of the bathrooms. And so to get a 930 gross square foot bathroom, which would have 2 women's stalls, one is ADA compliant, 1 shower and a changing room, and then 2 men's stalls, 2 men urinals, and both of the stall and the urinal will be ADA compliant, shower and changing rooms. It is estimated to cost $296,736, and that's $320 a square foot, in addition to the $36,000 engineering fee. We only budgeted this year $150,000 for the bathroom, so we need some direction on, do you want to go forward with this, or would you like to look at other options? It would be concrete. It would probably last a very long time. Any questions?
Yeah, the key is, I mean, do you want a facility that we're not going to have to go back and do something other than maintenance, obviously, I mean, like anything else. But it would be it better be for that. But I mean, it would be not brick, but concrete building, but that would have sides on it to make it look better than just the block. But the ones that went to, where do we go? Alta Vista, it would be similar to that. I don't know that they had changing rooms. I can't remember exactly, but theirs is block with some facade on it. It is a lot of money. The question is, do you want to build something that's going to last there? We're planning for we already have a park, playground park. We already have the splash pad. The other plan is in the future, some courts, basketball / pickleball before a center's ever built or open. So, I guess the question is, will this be useful for a long period of time to put the investment in? I did talk to Julie. Obviously, if you move this route, then we would have to increase the budget, and you could either pull it from contingencies, or we could use the set-aside account if they wanted to, correct?
Yes.
So the set-aside account has about $2 million.
Yes, we have enough in set aside already to cover the bonds. Everything that we put back every month is for future CIP.
So, I mean, you got more in the set-aside than you do contingency. Both are used for emergency purposes or purposes that we're over in some area. So you do have some funds if you wanted to do that. We just have to come back before you to move forward with it. But we wanted to get an idea of where you may want to go with it.
Well, I guess my thoughts is, and I've been on council a little while, and sometimes we will put things off and then pay a whole lot more for them later. So my opinion is we do have the funds and we want to have a top-notch facility out there. I think we need to go forward with it. That's my opinion.
I'm in agreement.
I think I may be living in the past when I ask this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Once upon a time, I know the town was able to build whatever they wanted to within our own structure, as far as our employees, block, the whole 9 yards. Do we not have that capability to build a building ourselves?
Can I answer that? I talked to Robin, and he does not have the manpower to do something like that. Because I went to him about this.
We at one time did do that. I know it.
Yes, but he says he definitely doesn't have the manpower to do that now.
I realize that, but I just wanted to make sure that that was not an option. My other comment.
That's a big construction undertaking for Public Works, for what we want, along with, I mean, you're going to pull guys that I don't see that as a possibility.
Hey, yeah, and Tommy, maybe we could ask some of our local contractors if they want to donate time and money towards something like this that would help. Just asking.
How much did you say the fees, not fees, the drawings were going to cost us?
Well, the
36,000?
engineering schedule is 36,000. The building design 7,000, construction documents 9,000, the bidding and negotiations 5,000, construction administration is 7,000, and then the building engineers is 8,000. So that's how they come up with their $36,000 fee.
That's all in the 36,000.
Yes.
Okay. Now I understand a little better. I just wanted to understand.
Okay, I was a little bit curious about this when I saw it because my ward, Ward B, has the famous Grove Park at the top of the hill. People have been there. They've got a unit there at one point. It used to be functional, right? It's no longer functional. It kind of looks like a pagoda at this point, a falling apart pagoda. But I was curious, and I thought, as long as we're going down this road, maybe we'd have people look at that too. Doesn't sound like that's an option at this point. But I did do a very cursory search about prefab developments. I was able to find some. I didn't get any pricing. I'm wondering if that was where the breakdown. But I did find some websites out there that showed these things that come in on a truck. You configure them. Did Mr. Caldwell not see anything like that, or was it maybe just a...
No, and he reached out to numerous places, vendors, and he went to so many splash pad parks, trying to say, hey, where did you get yours from? So he did try really hard because he was determined we were going to get a prefab, and then he discovered it just wasn't an option. And by the time you got one that you customized like you're talking, it would probably cost us as much as it's going to cost us to build it.
Okay, thank you.
I think, as Mr. Davis alluded to, if the game plan is if the recreation master plan that was passed in 2018, if the game plan is for a lot more of that to continue to come to fruition, having a solid bathroom changing structure there, I think would be well received from the citizens. Mr. Davis, did you have something?
I agree with Mr. Hunter. I mean, this is really a fantastic place out there. I think if we put something up that's not aesthetically pleasing, I think we would regret it, really. I can envision a brick veneered building out there, and I think it would look fantastic.
Not
Well, that, you said they would have a,
facade on it,
what is it? What's the
not brick veneer.
What is a facade then?
It would be like, yeah, it was not
Well-
gonna be brick.
Well, like a stucco is what
It'd be more like the wood it'd be wood and things like that. I mean, the building itself is going to be block, but then they'll put facade on the block, but it's not going to be brick. That price goes up tremendously
Fair
if
enough.
you want brick.
It would look good, though. No, I get it, but still, a nicely constructed building that's going to be permanent versus something that could wear out, it makes sense.
If we are inclined to do this, which I have no problems with, my only thoughts would be, do we think about if we're going to do the pickleball court, do we need to have it? I just don't want to build it and it be too small, and we regret not making it big enough to accommodate our future plans as far as development out there is concerned. What else would we possibly envision going out there as well, to where we can make sure that we have it adequate to be able to be used for more than just the splash pad itself?
I would say you don't have much, the scope of that land. If you want to build a decent-sized community center off of the road, and then behind it, in between the splash pad, and have still some green space with trees and things like that, you're not going to get anything other than that out there. And the positioning of this is going to be behind and to the side of the, behind the splash pad, to the side of the playground, and not in the middle. You know, I mean, so the people at the pickleball and basketball will have to walk a little bit, but it's also can be used for people at the trail too, so.
I think what Mr. Davis is alluding to, if we remember in the recreation master plan, that did call for the ultimate dream of a rec center down there at Wilkes Lake. Which is still.
Eventually, those are gonna have bathrooms as well.
Yeah, and that will have bathrooms as well, exactly. So the general idea, right, with the pickleball courts, basketball courts, rec center, bicycle pump track, building out more trails that connect to the High Bridge Trail, all of that creates a real center of recreational opportunity out there. And I think if we can vision it and make it happen, it'd be a beautiful addition to the town. But I think this moment right now, I think the number one call from most constituents going to the splash pad was, we would love to see a changing station and a bathroom out there. And it seems like there's a consensus to do it right the first time.
Absolutely.
So can I know where you want to pull your money from, so when we bring the budget up?
Out of Julie's pocket?
No, I wish.
What is Scott's recommendation? Where we gonna pull the monies from?
Mine's a set-aside account.
What's the balance in the set-aside again, please?
It's over 2 million.
Sounds good.
We're only talking about
Do you need
less
a-
than
do you need a
200,000
motion?
to add, correct?
182,000, like 183,000 that we'll take from it.
Do you need a motion on that, or can we just, or we just got a consensus to
You can
roll
do a
forward?
consensus, because we've got to bring
Yeah.
it back for you
Come
to
back.
officially,
Yeah.
so that we can use those funds.
Okay, so set aside.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, Town Manager's Report.
I don't really have anything. I usually do my major report at the regular meeting, so I don't really have anything other than it's Rock the Block on Saturday, 5 to 9. So come support your Farmville Downtown Partnership.
That's a good reminder. I'll go around the table. Mr. Hardy,
I'm good.
Mr. Hunter,
Just circling back with the town manager in reference to, did we hear anything on the bus stop that they want to put up off of Vernon Street?
I have not, no. We have to change our routes if we're gonna do, you talking about a shelter or?
A shelter.
I have not. I'll get that back to you.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Yola?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Parrott?
I'm good.
Mr. Dwyer?
Not a thing.
Mr. Reed?
I'm good.
All right. I will briefly, because I'll do my normal rundown next week as well, but I did just come back from 2 days in Pittsburgh at the National Leadership Forum on Rural Development. And I can say definitively that the story of Farmville was found to be a compelling story in that environment with a bunch of leaders from across the country in rural development. There was a lot of funding opportunities there, and our story resonated. We have a good story to tell, and it made me proud to be from Farmville, but I'll report a little bit more in depth on that next week. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.